I mean, it's just massively fun, way faster than I expect, in way more situations, and I can get 3 jumbo-sized sausage rolls inside the frame. I mean, what is not to love? Yes, Evo! Woo!
My name's Guy Kesteven. I've been a professional mountain bike and kit reviewer for nearly 25 years, and this is Specialized Stumpjumper Evo Comp Alloy. So, Specialized Stumpjumper Evo, as the name suggests, this is the rowdier, radder model of Stumpjumper. And this alloy model is kind of the bike coming full circle, because it did start off as kind of an alloy experiment, just limited run. At the time, Specialized trail in geometry was pretty kind of uptight and old school, but everyone else was, well, a lot of brands were moving towards longer, lower, slacker, so they produced a few alloy Stumpjumper Evo frames just to kind of test the market, I see. And the response to them was absolutely insane. It was the must-have bike of that year if you're a test editor, and it's continued to kind of sell. And so, unsurprisingly, they produced a carbon version, but then when they redid the Stumpjumper a year and a half ago, they brought it out in carbon first, and I'll stick the review video up for that then. But this, it's taken them a while to get the alloy version of the Evo out, and that's because they've made sure they've loaded it with all the innovations, all the geometry change that makes this bike, well, quite frankly, bloody brilliant. So, one of the main questions I've been asked since I put this bike on Insta is it really a trail bike? And at 16 kilos, there's a fair amount of bike to pedal along. But having said that, the pedaling action is really good. I mean, in classic Specialized style, it does take the nose off the pedal stroke slightly, but, and I'm not going to come out with the climbs like a much lighter bike cliche, but all things considered, certainly doesn't struggle as much as you'd expect. And the traction of a jank and jumble like this is superb. Plus, you get harder compound T7 rear tyre, so it's a bit of a rolling advantage there. And it's double 29er, so that's going to sustain your speed a bit better. The only thing I would say is in really low bottom bracket setups, you will find you're tapping the pedals out a bit on rough and rutted ground. So while standard Stumpjumper, 130mm of travel, and the Epic Evo, which I actually filmed up here on these trails, are obviously going to be a lot more efficient, a lot lighter, but basically require less work to keep them going along. If you told me I had to pedal this bike all day, I'd be perfectly happy with that. I just try not to pick so many fights on the climbs and do the killing on the descents and rougher bits, but even so, he's carrying speed really nicely along here. But unsurprisingly, those super slack angles and that excellent, impressively plush suspension you've got at the back end, but it is mostly the geometry on this bike, just makes it an absolute joy when you're taking on more rough, rowdy descents at higher speeds.
And that low bottom bracket really helps when you're tucking it in through corners, and while the rear tyre is a T7 for easy rolling, the front tyre is a full super slow rebound T9, so excellent control there. And while if you run the head tube angle super slack, it's not going to help with wander on techie climbs. You have got a very steep seat angle, and while I probably want 35mm stem for descending in this setup, actually for climbing that bit of straight line stability is quite welcome. That felt good, not gonna lie, Ryan, that felt good. Whew. To be honest, I nearly didn't bring the GoPro on this ride because I knew it was going to be definitely trail at the start, and I thought this bike, even after a few weeks riding it, might be a bit much, but way, I'm so glad I did, because whoa, well, there's definitely some weight to get moving again. That rear hub pickup can be a bit slow and clunky, even just on fast, sweepy, slippery stuff like this. That low BB and that crazy slack front end just mean tons of confidence. So it's as relevant here as it would be if I'd taken the trouble to go to proper big mountains and geology over in the lakes, or taking it to a bike park and showed you how bad I was at jumping. It's still a trail bike. That's the take home. It's just one that loves the faster, rowdier, more reckless side of riding. And the faster you go, the more of those pedal strokes you get in, the better and better it feels. And you've got to remember, I'm coming off riding a full carbon flight attended Trek that cost probably about 10 grand more than this. Woo! Oh, more hills. Yes! Ah! Yes, Evo! Woo! Oh. I appear to have left everybody a very, very long way behind. And there are certainly a whole load of brilliant features packed into this alloy frame. For a start, you've got that fully adjustable geometry, so you've got switchable headset cups that allow you to add or subtract a degree from the 64.5 degree default setting. And then you've got a little chip on the rear FSR knuckle on this rear chainstay. It basically lets you drop the bottom bracket height, and that accounts for another half a degree off if you want it. So you can kind of set it up 65.5 degree for, in theory, for stuff like this, more traily stuff, or fully slack it out to 63 for proper rowdy bombing. But I'm running 63.5 at the moment, and I'm riding quite lumpy, techie single track, obviously one-handed, so I can talk to you. And slacker I go, the more I like it, and it's quite funny. I chatted to Mick Kirkman, good mate of mine who reviews for MBR, and he's got a an Evo on test at the moment. It's just like, I really didn't want to like it more and more. The slacker I made it, but it's just better, isn't it? I mean, I'm paraphrasing there, but that's the general vibe, and makes a serious gravity junkie. Hell of a rider, but equally applicable to more of a classic, old school, off-piste trail rider like me. As long as you're open-minded about it, and if you're not, just switch it back. Just a few minutes work. And the first time I did it, I presumed you had to take the fork out, but you don't. You just pop the stem off, replace the top of headset cap, and bosh, job done. Literally minutes work, if that. And because it's only a headset cup, you can easily take that with you. So it's properly changeable on the trail if you want. And the other super smart feature on this bike is the SWAT storage box. So basically a hatch under the bottle cage that lets you put all sorts of essential spares, accessories, tools and water if you get the optional bladder. And it's obviously something that Specialized pioneered, but getting it to work on an alloy frame, essentially cutting a big hole in a perfectly good down tube and still getting a bike that's certainly acceptably stiff. Don't think it's the stiffest thing I've ridden, but then the general overall vibe is great. Thanks very much indeed, thank you. Hello. And it's so much harder from an engineering point of view doing that on alloy rather than carbon, but you know, still get all the same warranty, so I'm guessing they're confident that they've done the job properly. Cheers, mate. And you've got to remember that not everyone wants carbon either. Some people don't trust plastic. They want that dentable toughness of metal. And this frame is just a brilliant advert for everything that can be great about alloy. And then you've got that really nice asymmetric strut design that they pioneered on the demo downhill bike. So that gives it a lot of stiffness through the centre section. You've got ISG mount on that screw-in bottom bracket, and you've got linkages that are so nicely machined. They look like they've been made by Hope. And you even get the option of a mullet. But to be honest, if you want to get really rowdy, I'd try and hunt down a Status. And that gets a simpler frame without the switchable headset, adjustable geometry, or the SWAT, but you get 425mm back end and a 327mm bottom bracket height, like the original Stumpjumper Evo. So that's a proper rowdy bike. But even with this proportional 441 back end on this S4, it's still really happy to get the back end out, to get that rear tyre growling. And then on the bigger frame sizes, you get a 451 back end to balance it out. And Specialized deserve credit for their sizing as well, because not everybody's getting that right at the moment. But this whole S system, this is an S4 bike, I'm 5'11" for the record. Just having those short seat tubes, long top tubes, just gives you loads of potential for, I mean, you've got a long dropper post as well, this X-Fusion Manic. It's got a nice long stroke on it, but it just gives you lots of options in terms of sizing as well, whether you want a shorter, taller bike or super slack and long. You could go. And this comp version is equipped with pretty much everything you need to make the most of that geometry and that sorted suspension. You've got Box 36 rhythm fork, which is definitely one of the best budget aggro forks around. Surprisingly smooth, even over pretty chunky stuff. You've got Specialized own RX tune on that Float X rear shock. I mean, obviously you're going to notice that simpler damping getting harsher, kicking back more, and just feeling a bit more crude on high speed rocky stuff than a Performance Elite or a factory fork. But if you want fancier spec, then just get the Elite model, which comes with full Fox factory suspension, and you get the tubeless valves in the bike kit with it, so you have got everything you need. Take it tubeless, drop the pressure, and that makes a massive difference to how smooth and supple this bike feels. All right, thank you very much, cheers. And the fact you've got this T9 butcher up front is a real gift in terms of technical control. And while the rear hub is a bit clunky, you get 30mm internal rims and Kodar brakes with 200mm rotors. So the ride on this Stumpjumper Evo Alloy Comp is pretty damn great, which means the only thing to talk about is cost. And compared to something like a Canyon Spectral, obviously very, very similar bike in terms of purpose, capability, geometry, pretty much everything. Even the ride feel, even the suspension feels very similar. For the same money as this alloy bike, you get a carbon frame with very similar spec. I think it's SLX rather than SRAM NX, but fork and shock are the same. And the alloy version of that bike, and sorry, in that weighs about 1.5 kilos less. And then the alloy version with Dior, but the same shock spec, similar other spec, is a grand cheaper. And I know you're going to say, where, but that's direct sell, it's not from a shop. But the interesting thing is, as of this week, Specialized are also a direct sell brand. I mean, they're still supporting shops. There's like 5 different ways you can buy one now, various states of delivery, click and collect, buy it from a shop as normal, or even get it to your house and the Specialized dealer turns up, apparently in white gloves, builds it for you, lets you take it for a spin around the block, checks you're happy with it. But when you buy Specialized, you actually pay $50 more in the US. I don't know what it is in the UK yet, but to get it direct delivered seems a bit weird. So I have to see how that one plays out, because previously I'd say the support and warranty from Specialized has been probably the best in the business. I used to work at an S-Works dealer in like 92. We were embarrassed by the bikes that they'd warranty and how well they treat customers. In fact, we were furious sometimes because it's obviously been abused and they'd still swap them out. And then if you just want to get out the saddle and stairmaster it up a climb, then you've got full lockout on the fork and on the rear shock as well. So actually that really brings home how stiff this bike pedals. Actually, dare I say it, feels better up this same climb than the carbon Stumpjumper tested about a year ago. It's a positive experience, even with that weight. 16 kilos sounds a lot, but more and more of the bikes I'm testing are close on that now. Again, even that super fancy carbon everything flight attendant Trek is barely any lighter than that. So as long as it pedals well and rolls well, does the weight matter that much? But ultimately, what I really love about this bike is it just does its absolute best to do its utmost to help in every situation, whether that's helping you find your ultimate progressive handling geometry, super smooth, controlled and consistent suspension down the jankiest trails, excellent tyre grip, or just hiding your snacks and your spares in the down tube so you can't forget them. I mean, it even hustles through the pedals and climbs far better than it has any right to. I mean, it's just massively fun, way faster than I expect, in way more situations, and I can get 3 jumbo-sized sausage rolls inside the frame. I mean, what is not to love about those kind of statistics? Innovate or pie, hey Specialized? Happy 40th, actually over 40 years since the first Stumpy, but this might be my favourite yet.
So there you go. Sorry, storm damage means this edit's been a bit all over the place, but the bottom line is this bike, this Alloy Specialized Stumpjumper Evo, is absolutely belting. I mean, obviously it's the most affordable bike in the range, but I've loved it. I've absolutely loved it. I've got over my weight issues that I had because frankly it pedals really well. The geometry versatility I think is brilliant. It's a really easy way to experiment around and find out exactly what sort of ride feel suits you. But the baseline, the suspension, the traction from that front tyre, the control layout, the spec, everything is fully sorted for you to make the most of those geometry experiments. And as you've seen today, it's perfectly capable of tapping out over the hills to join up the really, really rowdy bits. So, massive thanks to Specialized for sending the bike in for test. Thanks to Giro Cycling UK, thanks to Petey's, thanks to Crud as well. Thanks to my Patreon supporters for sponsoring the channel on a monthly basis. They get exclusive, extended and behind-the-scenes edits and ad-free cuts as a thank you. So if you really like what I'm doing with the channel, please consider joining me on Patreon and really helping the channel grow. But to help it grow anyway, subscribe, click for notifications, tell your mates about it, give it a thumbs up, and keep your eyes peeled for the next edits coming up. Because if they're anything like this bike, they're going to be an absolute blast. But for now, I've been Guy Kesteven on Guy Kes TV, talking about the Specialized Stumpjumper Evo Alloy Comp. Or is it the Evo Comp Alloy? Oh, anyway, it's great. That's all you need to know.
I'll get them out.
Two, I reckon.
Is that it or one more?
No, I reckon we're done actually. I reckon three's the... that'll do, I reckon.
I hope you can get them back out again.
Oh yeah, we'll be fine. Well, they'll walk back in the end.
But it's discreet as well.
Cheers, gents.